Hey, it's another Saturday. You know what time it is. It's time for the revolution. Will not be televised. Why? Because it's going to be streamed. We're uber excited that you guys take time out of your schedule week after week after week. We're on 16 weeks now of informing you,
Yes,
encouraging
sir.
you, and inspiring you. I'm here with my main man, Dr. RickyAllmon, the intellectual genius, the prophet of our day. I'm excited to connect with you. What's up, Rick?
I'm good, man. How are you, Stephen?
All is well, man. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is. And we want them to be our neighbors, right?
Yes, sir.
I had to finish that. Can you believe it? 16 episodes in, man. I think people ought to know by now we're not going anywhere.
No, sir.
We
Here to
about to
stay.
rock and roll with this thing. Let them know who this is for, just in case somebody just happened to come across here from Mars and they're
Sure.
like, oh, this seems interesting. Let them know who this visual podcast is designed for.
Now, we're targeting those who are of an intellectual context. We're looking for leaders, employers, those in the corporate space, those in the digital space, pastors. If you got influence, you're a leader. Even if you're just influencing your goldfish to come get the food that you drop in, you're in a position of influence and leadership. So we're challenging you, but mostly, Rick, regardless of what the title is or how many letters are behind a person's name, if you're seeking to maximize your potential,
Yes.
mobilize your purpose, and multiply your productivity, this podcast is for you. It's our job every week to give you nuggets and tools and tips to help you to level up your life.
I like that. That's a good tag to add. Level up your life. That's what this podcast is about. And here's what we need you to do. If you are somebody who wants to maximize your potential, mobilize your purpose, and multiply your possibilities, at the bottom of this caption, we have a group that you can join. There's a group called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It will be streamed. It's designed for all of the individuals that Stephen just named. And pretty soon, in just a matter of weeks, you will only be able to watch this visual podcast exclusively in the group, or if you're on YouTube. So it's incumbent upon you to go and join the group now. So do it right now while we're on. Click that button, click the link at the bottom of the caption, answer 4 questions. They're multiple choice, so don't
Real
sit
simple.
here looking at us talking about it's 4 questions and it's multiple choice. And if you're lazy, you can just choose all of the above on all of them, okay? So it's real easy, but answer those questions, join the group.
Man, today we're continuing this series on partnership. We've looked at partnership from a multiplicity of angles and lenses, and today we've got some amazing co-hosts,
Oh, man.
a wealth of knowledge and insight, just some giants in the ministry space. And I'm uber excited for this conversation to get going. We're talking about who's on your team. We recognize and realize that it's important that you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, better than you, more brilliant, more creative than you, because that makes you look better in the end. People always ask me, Stephen, why don't you do certain things? Because I suck at it. And I'm going to hire somebody that's going to win in the areas that I suck, so I continue to look like I'm an amazing guy.
Right,
And so that's why I'm partnered with RickyAllmon,
man.
because I suck in some areas, and Ricky is a genius. And so
Right.
Ricky makes me look better. It's on purpose that we're partnered together.
Well, he is right about that from one perspective. We're intentional about our partnership, but it's because I brought the genius on. So that's what this is about. I think, and it's so important, Stephen, for people to understand that synergy is very critical in leadership.
For sure.
To make sure it's not just energy, but synergy, to make sure that you have people connected to you that bring the right things to you.
Correct.
Think about this. A genius is a person that's really only known for being great at one thing.
One thing.
Think about
Right.
it. Einstein was great at physics. I mean, it's like one thing. I mean, and we give them credit for everything as if they solved every problem in the world. No, they just did one thing well. They may have literally had to bring somebody else around to write down what they were doing, and we give them credit for all of it. And that's all genius is. So finding your thing and then finding the people that you need. I'm excited about our guests today. They're truly making us look better. What you say,
Go
Steve?
ahead and go ahead and introduce these geniuses that we have on the platform today, Rick.
That's what I've been waiting to get to. So our first co-host today is the Venerable Honorable Bishop Joseph Douglas Wiley-Taylor from the great city, the Crescent City of New Orleans, Louisiana, by way of Detroit and Mount Clemens. Y'all don't know all that. I'm just trying to save y'all some Google searching. So I gave y'all a little bit of it. He's one of the founding fathers of the Full Gospel Baptist Church. He's one of the 12. He didn't ask me to say this, but neither of our co-hosts know my introduction for them because I didn't ask them. So I'm responsible for everything I say. If you got anything you want to say about it or any discrepancies, send it to my email. I'll take it on. He's the son of the sainted Reverend Gardner C. Taylor. He's the senior pastor of the Life Center Cathedral, New Orleans. And he is my big brother and friend. That's the distinction that matters to me the most, is that he's my big brother and my friend. And then what can I say about our other guest co-hosts? This my man, 100 grand, the Reverend Dr. L. Bernard Jakes of the great West Point Missionary Baptist Church. He's my frat and my friend. He's a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. When you got a beginning, who cares how it ends? He's a thought leader. He's an activist. I call him a 21st century philosopher. That's not a title he wears. That's something I ascribe to him. But gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have both of you all here with us today. I'm glad to have an elder statesman here, and he's not elderly, but he's our big brother to all three of us. Bishop Wiley, thank you so much for being here, sir. How are you doing today?
I am well, and thank you so very much for this opportunity. Let's put a few asterisks by that introduction. Genius and all of that. Don't Google that. You'll come up with the wrong thing. It's a joy to be with you, Ricky. And to be with these young men is truly an inspiration.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
And what's up, Brother Jakes? How are you, sir?
Man, I am doing well. Thank you so much for the invite. And let me just let your streaming community know that we were late because of me.
Thank you.
So I own it because I believe in accountability. I ain't gonna be whooped about it.
We were not going to put you on blast, but we do apologize, you all. And it's not all on him. For some reason, out the blue, I had mic issues, and this is a platform of transparency.
Yes, sir.
When you're live, and Stephen and I have been in this space for a little while now, whatever can happen will happen. All of a sudden, my big money mic just went out. I don't know. So just so you'll know, it's not all on my brother. Part of it's on me. But let's get into this. So Bishop Wiley, we're going to start with picking your brain. So this is just one of our phone conversations. Forget that there are people watching around the world. I just want to talk to you for a moment. You've seen more than a few evolutions of the ecclesiological construct that we call church, and particularly the Black church. You have led in and been a part of an engineering apparatus for Reformation. As I mentioned in your introduction, you're one of the founding fathers of the Full Gospel Baptist Church. My initial question is twofold. One, have you ever seen anything that has affected the church like this pandemic that we're still walking through? And then two, what are some of the most significant effects that you feel this occurrence, this event that is still evolving, what are some of the most significant effects that you believe it's had on the church?
First, gentlemen, you would have to go back to 1918 for the nation to have this kind of pandemic. The flu that struck the nation in 1918 had a similar effect. And what's scary about it is it happened in 1918, It died down, but it came back in 1919, and the world lost between 50 and 60 million people. We didn't see it coming, but the disturbing thing is we should have at least been aware that changes take place in a cyclical manner in a historical construct. That's just the way it is. I thought we were sort of caught off guard because I think we had become complacent and comfortable with the world as it was, although there have been a number of changes in the last few years. So no, none of us alive have seen anything like this. Concerning the matter of how it has affected the church, it has shaken, challenged, and disturbed almost every system with which we've become comfortable. And I hate to sound, maybe as you get old, you become cynical. But I think the most powerful thing, gentlemen, is that it has shaken all of those systems that we should have been looking at and changing years ago. But we left
whoa, Bishop. I need you to repeat that and recapitulate it, please. Just rewind just a little. Say that. So you all are hearing from a senior statesman here.
Yes.
Let's note this moment. Say that one more time, please.
What has happened in this pandemic, gentlemen, is that what we should have changed a long time ago, we should have investigated, we should have reassessed. We left it as it was. And I guess the Lord says, since you guys aren't going to do it, I'm going to do it. The senior statesman is an interesting title. I guess because I was born 1955 AD, not BC, not before Christ, but before Fable. But I've been arguing, and this is something, I've been arguing with church structures for the last 20 to 40 years.
Wow.
Over what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Is it relevant? Is it significant? Is it making a difference? And basically, I always got the response, leave it alone, work with the system. Well, the system is broken for years. Let's tell the truth. Now, I don't criticize millennials. Some of the things they say are intemperate, but listen, many of them are saying what you're doing doesn't make sense. It doesn't touch the issues of my life. It doesn't deal with where I am. It's antiquated. It's out of date. And we missed it. And I'll take part of the credit for this. Over the last 25 or 30 years, we've created systems and structures that did not work, did not function, did not speak to the real need. And right now we're being forced to do it. But here's my fear. And this is where I'm looking to you young men. If we're not careful, we'll come out of this pandemic and go right back to business as usual. And that's going to be detrimental.
Yeah, totally. Bishop Jakes, I've always seen you as a progressive guy who's pushing the envelope.
Bishop Wiley,
right?
Bishop Wiley.
No, I was going to Jakes. I just described
Oh.
I just added on an extra title. I'm being prophetic right now, Rick.
Okay.
No, but I've seen you, man, as being a progressive guy, a progressive thinker. So what are some of the characteristics that you've looked for in building your team, your staff, in terms of forming these partnerships that helps you to be progressive and stay above the mark as best you can?
Well, one of the things that's very important to me as a pastor is for those around me to understand my heart and to have my heart. That's very important to me. The second thing, which is as important as the first thing, is, and I believe that Ricky said it earlier, you need to be smarter than me. And you need to be well equipped and an authority in that which you claim you're an authority in. As an example, I've created in March a COVID-19 task force. On that task force, Thurston, I have one of my members that works for the Chicago Department of Public Health. I have an attorney on there because a lot of times we don't think about the legalities that takes place in the midst of all of this. I have human resource professionals because they're the ones that understand how and the nuances and these things are supposed to go. But I also have on that team my audio visual person, because when we come on the other side of this, we can't look at church as being the same.
Right.
Because now we've availed ourselves to a whole different community of people, and they are not going to be interested in stepping foot in West Point Baptist Church, the building, when for over 1 year, all they did was have to log on. So, and all of these persons are experts in their field. So what they do is I expect for them to meet without me, pull everything together, pull together a playbook, sit down, explain it to me, make me better, make me smarter. So as you said, that was you, Thurston. So when I present it to those whom God has placed in my care, they know that it is done with deep thought, intellectual thought, critical thinking, and that we're not just doing it just because it's just something to do.
Got it. Bishop Wiley, let me switch back to you. I want you to speak with a broad brush for an older demographic. I know that everybody doesn't fit into the plate, but since you, from an age perspective, represent that demographic, I want you to speak to this point. And Ricky kind of mentioned it, that there's been this iteration of how Black church has shifted over the years. And I'm noticing a change in the role or the view of the pastor from this lens. The pastor was the end-all be-all in previous generations. The buck stopped there. How would you communicate to other pastors of your age demographic or even older to help them to recognize, no, it's not just about you, sir or ma'am. It takes a team, and you don't have it all. Just because you've been called to preach doesn't mean that you've been equipped to lead.
By taking the historical perspective, if you go back and you go back just a few years, the preach was all we had. The church was all we had. I was sharing with my wife the other day, in my lifetime, I remember when the first Black mayor was elected in the United States. The first Black mayor. Now, from that time, we've gone from that to the first Black president. So understanding where we came from, our historical context, the church was all we had. That's not the case today. Dr. Jakes just pointed it out. Now we have a church full of people, educators, intellects, but we also have the capacity to reach out to other individuals. What we've done is that we've gotten ourselves locked in an old system that no longer works. I have no desire to be the end-all be-all in my congregation. It is my job to reach out to, tap into, and pull up and out of the resources in my community and in my church, the people who have the skills I don't have. First of all, why would I want them? I don't want those skills. Paul said, this one thing I do. Now, basically, I'm called to preach, but I need people around me with all the skills. And listen, age is no excuse for those of us who are my age still leading churches to say, that's the way it always been. Listen, I don't have the big brick cell phone anymore. I don't have a rotary telephone. Now, I do have a cassette player, but leave me alone, okay? I have a life, okay? But I also know that downloading is the way you go. My daughter laughs at me because I have a computer that I bought in 2006. It's still working. But my daughter shakes her head and says, Daddy, please, it's a dinosaur. So I'm cognizant of the fact that smart minds, great minds, intellectual minds are critical if we're going to reach this generation and if we're going to be viable. Now, let me piggyback on one thing Dr. Jake says. The first thing in selecting a team, though, is selecting somebody with your heart. That's an old concept that we must not leave. Remember Moses and Joshua. Remember Elijah and Elisha. Read that very carefully. But also ask yourself, what happened to Gehazi? Why was Gehazi not like Elisha? Ended up, instead of getting Elisha's mantle, he got leprosy. Elisha was in the grave when a soldier was thrown on his bones and he got up. I want y'all to ponder this from a scripture point of view. Why was the anointing in the grave? The anointing should have been in the grave. Jesus said, Mark says, and Jesus chose 12. Okay, that's the choosing. That's the team. But don't move too quickly. That they might be with him. That's the first thing. That he might send them forth to preach. We jump from the choosing to the preaching. You can't do that. That critical piece. You've got to be with me. You've got to walk with me. The scripture says for 12 years, Elisha poured water over the hands of Elijah. That's a euphemism for he washed his hands when he came out the bathroom. So those persons that you select must have your heart, your vision and your spirit, then their gifts must be implemented.
My.
So let me say something. Right, yeah, we're digesting. So Bishop, along with a high competency level, along with the synchronicity with your heart and your vision, what are some of the other intangibles that matter to you when you are, especially leading through the times we're in now? What are some of the intangibles that matter to you personally as the leader that you look for? So you're like, okay, they got skill, they're loyal, but what are some of the other things that matter to you and why?
Gentlemen, read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's not a spiritual book, but you have to read it. First of all, he says, get the right people on the bus, the right seat on the bus, and the wrong people off the bus. Second thing he says is that if you have A people in your organization, pay them, promote them, strengthen them, push them forward. If you have B people, he says, invest in them, give them all the skills they need because they have the potential to be A people. He said, get rid of the C people because they're going to drag the organization down. What's tangible to me, Rick, is finding out who's on my team, where should they be on the bus, and the right people off the bus, and then giving them everything they need to become everything that I need. If I don't empower them, they can't empower me. If I limit them, they'll limit me. The president of the Xavier University, now retired here in New Orleans, was there for over 40 years, Dr. Norman Francis. I asked him, I said, Dr. Francis, is it true what I've heard about you? He said, what did you hear? I heard that you get the best people you can find, get out of their way, and let them do the job. He says, absolutely right. So now I'm the decider, but I equip them and empower them to do their job. And we pastors, let's go back to the original point, Stephen, are going to have to stop trying to be everything or afraid that somebody's going to steal our thunder because they have the skills we don't have. Right. Outshine me in your area. Please do.
Right.
Please do.
Right.
Let me pivot this. We're talking about partnership and we're looking at it from a pastoral lens. Jakes, I want to throw it back to you from this lens, especially with our current cultural context. What should the partnership between pastor and politician look like?
That, Stephen, I got to give you a pound. That was a great pivot, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, now you would ask me that question. Yeah, I am a firm believer that the pastor and the politician relationship is very important. Because if the pastor should be the moral voice for the people, and if politicians do not have someone who they know will say what's right and what's wrong, and who does not have their hand in the politician's pocket, then that relationship should be one where the pastor speaks for the people as the prophet, and the politician does the work for the people. And that's about all I got to say about that.
No, Jakes, you have to elucidate. No, we are not letting you off the hook. Unpack just a little. You don't have to unpack everything, but just a little.
Well, one of the things that troubles me, is that politicians have mastered pimping pastors. Because many pastors, and I know it's making a broad stroke.
No, you talking.
As opposed to us understanding our roles. And I'll stop and say, Bishop, because we just met, and I just want you to know I have officially adopted you as a father in ministry. So you can call me a bastard child if you want to. I don't even care. I just want you to know.
I have no bastard children. You are my son. We'll work out the details later.
Thank you, God. one of the things and like I said, I'm not making a broad stroke, but I've seen it in over 20 years of serving as a local pastor in the city. And for those that are watching, because I am engaged with politicians.
Yes.
I'm engaged with them.
Right.
I pray with them.
Very
also,
effectively, I might
help them
add.
shape policy. But I also am that person that will call them and say, you're on the wrong side of history. And that's what's so very important. There are not enough of us who can say with a voice of authority, you're on the wrong side of history. And if you are not doing what you promised to do, or even if you don't know what to do, we should speak as the voice of the people, because the pastor, and I've seen some changes, Thurston, in some years, but the pastor should be the liberating voice of the community.
Yes.
And the liberating voice of the people, because, and I can tell one politician here in the city, when they start talking about some things that I don't want to share publicly, but I let them know very quickly. I said, I get paid by West Point Baptist Church. I said, let me be very clear to you. I represent the voice of West Point, I represent the voice of Bronzeville, and I represent the voice of my people. And that is the way I believe pastors and politicians should engage with each other.
Yes, sir.
Again, being the moral voice,
Right.
And serving as the moral compass in order to help liberate our people specifically, but all people in general.
In other words,
I'm so
go
glad.
ahead.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, young
Yeah.
man, because the crisis in America right now, and it's a critical issue that can't be avoided. White evangelicals have created a rift in this country that will not be repaired. And I want to say this specifically, not because they do or do not support the platform of the president. That's not what I'm talking about. You have a right to support your platform. But on the white evangelicals, and unfortunately among our black evangelicals, we've lost our voice, we've lost our place, we've become so engaged with the political process, they own us now.
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, remember history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. engaged the president. He had an open door to the White House. He moved Lyndon Johnson to create some of the greatest civil rights movements we've had in this country. But he knew that was going to create a rift between him and Lyndon Johnson, and it did. But he had to stand for the moral position. Many of our leaders today have been purchased by, co-opted by the political system and lost our prophetic voice. What about the Samuel anointed Saul, and the same Samuel told him, the Lord has rejected you. Nathan went in and told David, you're a man after God's own heart. You're the sweet psalmist of Israel. You're a great warrior, but thou art the man. And unless we maintain that moral voice, the voice of our people, we have no use.
That's right.
Let me pivot us again. Bishop, you spoke a second ago about your daughters and them trying to influence you and impact you to spend some money to upgrade your technology. What role, what characteristics are needful and necessary on the personal side of pastoring? Let's let the people in kind of behind the curtain on what I like on the personal side. What is it that you found needful and necessary to help you along this journey to sustain and maintain on the personal side?
First, to listen. To know that there are another
Wait, hold on, Bishop. Say that. What's the first thing? What's the first thing you said? What's the first thing? To listen. I think that's very critical. I hope you all are hearing this. The first thing is not him giving instruction.
I'm 65 years old.
Right.
But I don't plan to become an anachronism. I don't plan to become a relic. I don't want to do that. I want to be relevant. So, but I'm 65. My daughters are in their 30s. They know what I don't know. They know the world that I don't know. They understand what's meaningful and relevant. So I listen and say, well, baby, that's just the way it is. And there's certain things I hold on to. Worship at Life Center is a strange experience. I'm old, I sing hymns, I do stuff like that, and then turn right around and jump into the 21st century. So if you sit in Life Center for 90 minutes, you're not going to get 90 minutes of hymns and stuff from the 60s. You're going to get a historical moment, okay? But everything these young people are doing, now listen, some of it I don't understand, but guess what? I don't need to. They understand it. I listen. Right. Second thing, I'm open. Daddy, thank God for my daughter. Put me on Facebook Live before the pandemic. Why? Yes, because I said, hey, you want to do that? Let's go with it. Daddy, this is the computer you need. This is the device you need. My daughter even tells me the latest slang. My people think I know that slang. I get that from my baby girl. Daddy, that's new. Drop it on the people. I listen. And they think I'm fly. Okay? I listen. Secondly, I'm open. I'm open. I have a cassette, gentlemen. My church doesn't have a cassette. I have a record player. My church doesn't have a record player. Okay?
Yes.
So some things are personal. I listen and I'm open. And thirdly, I want to know what's going on, y'all. Tell me what's happening. And this is why my relationship with a Stephen and a Jakes and a Rick is so important, because you all tell me what's going on.
Yes, sir. Jakes, what's your lens on that?
My lens is the same as Bishop's. I have a 20-year-old daughter, and let's go back to the streaming piece. So, Bishop, when you talked about Facebook Live, I have to say that I have always bucked against streaming. I've always bucked against cameras. I mean, they had to almost pull my hair out of my head. That's why I'm bald head. Do streaming a few years ago. So it was like, all right, so we do the streaming. They had to show me how to go on Facebook Live. You know, actually they showed me in January, before we even knew that we were entering into a pandemic, and it was shown to me. Now, it was shown to me because when my mother passed in January, we were trying to figure out how to, West Point was going to stream it, and how to also be able to stream it from my phone if necessary. So they showed me how to do Facebook Live. Because of that is why we ended up not being in the sanctuary. Well, third Sunday in March was last time in the sanctuary, and I'm going somewhere with this. I'm a storyteller.
Go ahead.
So, that Wednesday after that third Sunday is when I started looking, going, okay, wait a minute, how do I get this on? Now, I have a little brother. My little brother's 14. And my mom adopted him she's had him since he was 3 months. She adopted him when he was 10 years old. So my little brother's 14. So he was staying with us for a little while once they shut the schools down. And I'm sitting there looking, going, okay, how in the world do I do X, Y, and Z? And he waddled his little skinny 14-year-old self over there to my computer and my iPad. He said, here, press that, do that, go.
Wow.
He said, and he was on, he said, talk. I was like, hey, everybody. So I understand what Bishop is coming from, what Bishop is saying. We got to let and allow our younger generation to usher us into the now. So even at 49, who will be 50 in October, if the good Lord says the same, there's a whole lot that I desire to know. And Thurston, when we laughed about it, I was very serious when I said, I listen to you, I watch you, I hear you, because you make us better by making us relevant. So I don't know if I answered your question, but all I know is I thank God for these great young minds that know how to work all this stuff. Now, as it relates to Bishop, I'm with you. West Point is 103 years old. West Point is the home church for the late Dr. Albertina Walker. We love hymns. We loved anthems 7-8 years ago. Because I done buried more folks than I had at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So the church had to transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to recreate myself in the midst of transition. I'm a church baby. I love hymns of the church. But then next thing you know, they want to start coming in there and singing stuff that ain't got nothing to do with God in my mind. But guess what? It spoke to them. So I'm just kind of like, man, let it ride.
Let it ride. Let it ride.
Let it ride. Because somewhere it is going, I have to find the theological relevance in it to be able to teach them. So that's all I got to say, because I'm a storyteller, and you have to cut me off, Ricky, because
that's
all
why
all preachers are storytellers.
Right.
That's it.
So Bishop, here's my question. To the point, the receptivity that both you and Dr. Jakes are showing in partnering with the young minds, creative minds in your congregation and even in your family, where would you ascribe the hesitancy that we see from certain leaders in engaging those that are technologically savvy, in engaging those that have a creative way of doing things? Where does the fear come from, if we can call it that, with some seasoned leaders in embracing new methodology and new ways of doing things?
It goes back to what we said before we began the call. A lot of leaders don't understand the difference between tradition and traditionalism. Tradition is important. We need to maintain those traditions, and we need to hold them because they're foundation. Traditionalism is a system that's no longer useful. It's outdated, it's outmoded, and we hold on to it. One of the problems we have as leaders is the problem of evolving. I've been preaching since 1963. I've had to reinvent myself several times because I watched the world around me change. Many times we fear, Dr. Allmon, that we'll no longer be relevant, will no longer be accepted. And so we hold on to things because it's what we're comfortable with. The one thing a leader cannot afford to do is to be comfortable. The world is changing around us at a scary pace. And quite frankly, I want to know what is changing. I'm not going to try to be you guys. It's the most foolish thing in the world is for me to try to do what you do. You guys are much younger than me. And Ricky flatters me by acting as if I'm one of his contemporaries, but I'm not. I'm the big brother. So I'm not going to act like you guys, but at the same time, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of what you bring. And I need to, as a leader, older than you guys, be open to change so that coming behind me, you don't have to totally recreate the world in order to succeed me. When I leave Life Center as senior pastor, I want my successor to say, who was this guy? I don't have to come in here and tear down everything from the 40s and start over again. He prepared the world for me as it is today. Gentlemen, how are we talking right now? We're talking to the world on a Zoom call. Now, I'm on that call. It gives me the opportunity to be heard by many that could not be heard a few years ago. Ricky, it's fear. And also some of us want to be, unfortunately, some of us want to be gods. We want to so rule the environment that people only see us. Guess what? That's not that day anymore. At the Life Center Cathedral, I give broad room for anybody the Lord is using to be used that Sunday, and it doesn't have to be me.
That's right.
I saw something in Dr. Allmon's life with if you don't mind me sharing it.
I don't mind.
Because it's public. One Sunday morning during the lifetime of Bishop Brazier, he allowed Ricky to have words. Ricky had words, the house blew up. The bishop stood up and said, well, the message today will be brought by Dr. Allmon. Now, in my mind, that wasn't planned. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ricky. That wasn't planned. There was a message planned, but he sensed. What did he sense? The anointing was on Dr. Allmon for that day, and he didn't get in the way because he's the bishop and the senior pastor. I don't take myself too seriously. I'm open to what the Lord is doing. The wind blows where it pleases.
Wow.
Sir.
Jesus is the star of the show, not me.
That's right.
That's very critical. So Dr. Jakes, if we can shift here, another pivot from the ministry side, and I won't say it's a complete pivot because what we're getting ready to talk about now is intrinsic to ministry, and that is the personal relationships. But not just from the sense of your family, but can you speak to the importance of having friendships and partnerships in your personal life that feed you emotionally, mentally? There's a lot being said about mental health, especially for leaders during this time. Can you speak to that and the importance of that and what you look for personally? You and I are friends. You and Stephen are friends. We all connect. I mean, you and I got on the phone the other day. We had talked an hour and we'd only planned to talk 5 minutes, and it just organically happened. Speak to what are the elements, what are the attributes that matter to you when it comes to friendships and relationships or your personal life, and then how does that feed your ministry life?
The first thing that's important for me in my personal relationships is honesty. Be honest with me about me, because there's the personal, who is LaShawn Bernard Jakes. That's what the L stands for, LaShawn.
Okay.
So you have people that know. Some people know me as LaShawn. Some people know me as Bernard. Most people call me Jakes. That's that aspect. Then you got the aspect of pastor. And what I've come to learn in these over 20 some odd years of serving as a local pastor is that they will oftentimes approach me from a position of pastor means perfect. And I'm quick to tell folks, pastor doesn't mean perfect. I need honesty. If you love me, be honest with me about me. If my shit, I'm sorry.
Keep rolling.
Sorry.
You don't hear with me, man. Free.
Oh, okay, all right. Sorry.
The views expressed on this show are not those of one half of the host. It may be those of the other host. Okay, which way I need to point? That way. It may be the views of him, but it's not.
Listen, Jakes, don't worry about it. I have one of those anointings too, so just keep
You may hear speaking in tongues on this show from time to time.
So be it. Because if there's one thing young people want, they want honesty. So keep it rolling.
That, by the way, let me put this disclaimer. That was LaShawn talking right there. That's what you heard. But no, continue.
But I need honesty. So like I said, if my caca stinks, or as when I used to live in Arkansas, they say you slip and show.
Right.
I need you to tell me.
Right.
Don't just assume that because I am this person, that this person doesn't need your honesty. I need you to tell me. So that's the first thing. The second thing is not only honesty but confidentiality. Because if we're friends and we're in a personal space, then I want to be able to take my collar off, let my hair down. You know, if I'm gonna sit and smoke my cigar, I'm gonna smoke my cigar with you, and we're gonna sit and kick the bobos. You know, what I don't want in my personal space is all of a sudden, every time we gather together, it becomes a prayer meeting or a worship service on Sunday morning. I don't want that.
Right.
I don't need that. That's because this is my personal time. The third thing that's important in my personal relationships is that Albertina used to say this to me. She said, "Use me, just don't abuse me." She said, "Because everybody needs to use somebody for something.
Wow.
But just don't abuse me." So if we have personal relationships, I understand that there may be some people I'm connected to that may be able to help you, because that's what life is all about,
right.
Networking. But if you try to get in my personal space because you're trying to push your agenda, then I just tell folks in a heartbeat, let's not do that. Let's not do that, because God gives me a spirit of discernment, and I still ain't above. Yeah.
Laying hands.
Yeah. Yes.
So
that's the chief thing. That's very important to me, man. And can I also add this? Be real. I can't stand people who are not authentic.
Right.
Be your authentic self with me.
Authenticity.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, bro. When I tell you, that drives me absolutely nuts. That's why I don't have a lot of preacher friends.
You have an allergic aversion to it. Right, I understand.
People coming around me talking about, well, Doc, and all that. Negro, just talk to me. This is Jace. This is, let's just talk.
Right.
We was on the phone the other day, man. We was just kicking the ball.
Oh, had a blast.
Look, Dr. Allmon and Dr. Jace.
No.
Gonna deal with all. No, man, we was just sitting there talking. I saw Thurston the other day. We was at the march. Man, we gonna get together. We gonna hang out. Whoop, wop, the whoop. So authenticity is very, very important to me, because if you can't be your true authentic self, then no, we can't be in a personal relationship.
Right.
So that's very important.
Jakes, recap those 4 things right quick, just for those that are listening, because I think it's very important, especially for leaders, if you're going to have personal relationships that feed your purpose, that fuel your passion. I think these 4 qualities that he just gave for the type of individuals you need in your personal space is very critical. So just give us a quick recap of those 4 things.
I'm almost 50 years old. I can't tell you what I
So
was yesterday.
he said honesty was number 1. Confidentiality was number 2. What was number 3, Stephen?
What was number 3?
Stephen's younger than both of us.
I know
raw,
that
being real.
authenticity is a big one for me.
Honesty, confidentiality, and authenticity, but you said a 3rd one. And you forget I'm almost 52, so I'm 47. I'll be 48, so,
Yeah, honesty is important. Confidentiality. I know the 4th one was authenticity. What was the 3rd one I just said? That's very important to me. And it really, and I know it just dealt with persons. Oh, use me, not abuse me.
yes.
Use me, not abuse me.
Right.
We all need each other for something.
Right.
But don't take advantage of me.
Somebody with the right motive. Yes.
Right. Don't try to take advantage of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to that point, I want you 2 gentlemen to speak to young preachers, young pastors. As I engage them, I often look at them like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you 20, 30 trying to act like you 70? You're not
my
Caesar
goodness.
Clark, sir. So can you please share something with those younger preachers, pastors that might be tuned in today to encourage them along this pathway of leadership?
Bishop, I'm gonna lean to you, and then I'll because you're the bishop, you're the senior statesman, the elder statesman, whatever they call me. But I like to hear from you, and then I'll chime in.
You keep using those titles. There was a lady in my church talk about authenticity. She said, there's a term called Your Highness. She said that's awfully close to Your Highness. First of all, let me say to any young preachers that are listening, I love you. And I hope that you understand that you are the future. The first thing I would say to young preachers is that, first of all, dig your roots deep. Discover what real spirituality means, what real authenticity means, what it means to know the Lord, to know the scriptures. Don't try to build your ministries around what you see on television and the so-called celebrity preachers. Know the Lord for yourself. Don't just be a preacher. Follow the Lord Jesus Christ. Dig into the scripture, dig into the word. Secondly, know yourself. Know who you are. It's going to take you some time to discover your own identity, but it takes some time to find your own voice, but it will happen. Understand history. Study preaching and study preachers before your time, realizing it is not this time in which you live, but know the great preachers of the past, dig into them, dig into the preachers of the past, develop a serious theology. Bumper sticker theology doesn't work. I don't want to hear it. Others don't want to hear it. I was preaching in London to a group of migrants from the Democratic Republic of the Congo to London. I had to preach through an interpreter. And I said, some people in their life for a reason and some for a season. And the interpreter paused and repeated my words in French. And the people looked at me like the cow did the new gate. Because I realized that popular phrase in America didn't make sense in London.
Right.
So dig into your theology. So know the Lord, dig into the scriptures, know yourself, dig into your theology, and then be real. Be authentic. Give yourself time to grow. You won't be at 25 or 30 without trying to be at 65. So these are some of the elements I think that are critical. Your relationship with the Lord, your relationship with your family. Lay aside a lot of the images of ministry that just aren't authentic. That's where we got stuck. It is not the style of your clothes. It's not the gracefulness of your gestures or how you can bring it. It's your authentic self that will reach your generation.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jakes?
I want to, for young pastors, the sisters and the brothers out there, I would say that what's important for me is you move towards living out your calling to serve the Lord's church. In some capacity, either as a senior pastor or a staff pastor, is love the people.
Yes, yes.
Love the people. Work on your preaching. I think that preaching is absolutely powerful, and especially black preaching.
Yes, yes.
There's power in black preaching. The way we can tell a story and the way we put gravy on that meat as long as the meat has been cooked. Now, I ain't never seen nobody eat a bowl of gravy with nothing, not covering anything, nonetheless. But
yes,
as a pastor of 21 years, love the people, because if you don't, that's what people remember. They'll say, "Oh, that was a great preacher." Oh, they could preach until heaven heard the news. What really matters is when you gather and gain their heart. When you gain their heart, that says something. I remember a member Bishop, she passed about 5-6 years ago, named Zelma Parker Davis. And after my 3rd or 4th year at West Point, because she would always call me Jakes. She wouldn't put no handle on it, and I didn't care. She'd be like, Jake, so-and-so, Jake, so-and-so. And one day she asked me, she said, "Do you know why I don't call you pastor?" I said, "I really hadn't thought about it, but clearly you want to share that with me." She said, "Because if I call you pastor, that means that you have gained my heart. And I don't want you to gain my heart and then you turn around and leave."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. You know, El Bernard, you're so right. My dad used to say, no man is called or woman to pastor a church. He's called to become the pastor. I've been married for almost 40 years. My wife can say, "Give me your credit card, give me your checkbook, give me your cell phone." She can have it all. What is that? That's trust. She has my heart. Now, 2 weeks after we were married, I would say, "Babe, what you want the credit card for?" And many times young pastors come in because they're gifted. They think they've earned the right of the hearts of the people, and you don't get that overnight. And I'll say something else to young preachers. 2 things. First, you will only become pastor of that church through a storm.
That's right.
It's going to be some difficulty. There will be some weddings, some funerals, and don't try to. Jesse Jackson said something once I'll never forget. He said, when you go to a church, he says, don't try to use power before you get it. When you get it, don't abuse it. And when you lose it, don't try to use it.
That's right. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I'm working on a book that I've been working on. Every time I think I'm finished, I end up adding something. And one of the chapters in the book is assumed power versus acquired power. ACQUIRED.
Mm-hmm.
And the gist of it is, assumed power is the power you get when you become a pastor. You get your name on the bulletin. You may get your name on the marquee. They may allow you to alter the worship service somehow, some way. I said, that's the assumed power. You get to sit in on some meetings. I said, but it's the acquired power that you really want to wait. And that only comes by way of time and people learning to trust you. And in that, I say to, and I'm really speaking to those who desire to pastor, just because they call you don't mean they trust you.
No,
Because
no,
that
right.
to be earned. And I learned that from the late Deacon John St. Elmo Thigpen. John St. Elmo Thigpen was 97 years old.
Now that's a deacon's name right there, by the way.
Listen, let me tell you something. John St. Elmo Thigpen was about 5'4", high yellow, and when I tell you, mean as a junkyard dog. Mean as a junkyard dog to everybody else. So when I got to West Point, he and I sat down in my study, and he looked at me and he said, he drove a long Cadillac, and he sat with me and he said, look, he said, we're men. He said, we're men first. He said, now both of us on the square. He said, but we're men first. He said, so, I want you to be successful here. He said, if you want to be successful here, he said, one thing I need you to know. He said, before a problem arises, let's sit and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, let's sit and talk about it. No problem. So, there were some things that cropped up at West Point. You'd have to know West Point's history and how I got there. But John St. Elmo Thigpen, and this is what I talk about in the book, John St. Elmo Thigpen was the pastor of West Point Baptist Church. Because I can stand up there and say, I think we need to do X, Y, and Z. Thigpen can stand up and say, I don't think we ought to do it. And folks say, we ain't doing it.
You were the preacher, but you wasn't the pastor.
I was the chaplain.
Right.
I was chaplain.
I understand.
But then 5 years later, Thigpen was at the hospital, University of Chicago Hospital. He called me to his room. I sat down with him, put his hand on my knee. He said, I want you to know that I can go home and be with the Lord now. I said, why are you saying that, Deke? He said, because the church is in good hands. And he called the chair of the deacon board and said, let him pastor that church. Assumed power versus acquired power.
Yes, sir.
And at that point,
Man.
because I earned his heart, he in turn placed the mantle on me. So that's what I was sharing with a lot of young pastors. Don't be in such a hurry. Love the people, because if you love them, I promise you, I can say it. When I tell West Point, and I told West Point, we're not going back into the worship center until April of 2021. Easter Sunday is the first Sunday of 2021. That's when we're going back. Their response has been, Pastor, if that's what you say, then that's what we do. And that comes over time.
Yes, sir.
So I share that with you.
Well, El Bernard, let me chime in on that just to say this. I've been in two situations. I took over a church that was 60 years old when I got there. I wasn't the pastor right away. Watch this. 27 years ago, I founded Life Center. Founded it from the ground up. I've been its only pastor. But I was not the pastor on the first day. It may have taken 5 years or longer for me to become their pastor, even of the church I founded.
Wow. I've never heard that before from an organizing pastor. Wow.
As a matter of fact, and I began to recognize, first of all, the church grew. It grew real fast, which can be a problem. But those people did not know me, and I did not know them. So they had to gain the trust. Whatever gifts I had, whatever skills I had, those were just chaplaincy gifts, as you said. But now, right now, we're in the pandemic. I'm in the same situation you're in. Pastor, what we're going to do? I'm looking out for you. We won't go back until it's safe. All right, Pastor.
Right.
Plus, we went through Katrina. I preached for 7 years in a tent. For 7 years, I preached in a tent, had some problems, moved to a school. We're in our next building. They found out something about me. I'm not going to run. I'm stable, and I love them.
That's it.
Yeah.
Those key components.
Yeah.
Endear their hearts to you.
Right.
That's right.
They know now I'm not going to run.
Yeah. Man, this has been such a rich and robust conversation. Ricky, we got to do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, we do. We really do. I was sitting here thinking, this is a whole series in itself. Yes. It's a show by itself. And thank you all again, Dr. Jakes, Bishop Taylor. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, insightful, incisive, which is what we need right now. We need something that cuts into the heart of the matter and speaks to us where we are, speaks to who we are, so that we can do what's necessary. We won't just be doing things to do it, but doing what's necessary. I want to encourage those that are watching and those who will watch this, listen, you have the opportunity to connect to more wisdom from both of these dynamic leaders. If you want to connect to Bishop Wiley, their website is lccnola.org, lccnola.org. That's Life Center Cathedral. As a matter of fact, he was talking about worshiping in a tent after Katrina. I had the privilege of preaching in that tent a couple of times, and they called it the Canvas Cathedral. And if you wanted to get a feel of what it was like for the children of Israel going through the wilderness and the priests going into the holies of holies, let me tell you, when you mounted that podium, that platform, it was an amazing, ethereal experience. It's something else. He's got a story, but he's also got the wisdom to go with it. So lccnola.org, his Cash App is there. We encourage you. When our guest co-hosts come on, we bring you all the best. So just show them some love. Then, of course, Dr. L. Bernard Jakes. I learned his first name is LaShawn. I'll be using that. That's going into the arsenal. Hey, watch it now. Elder Pleasant says that was a true blessing, Bishop Wiley. Elder Pleasant is watching.
Okay. Listen, I want to say, too, in the interest of accountability and honesty, I want you guys to know that Dr. Richard Allmon II texted me last night.
I did.
To be on this call today.
I did.
And the only reason I said yes is because I love my big brother with all my heart.
And and I so appreciate it. Stephen and I had to do a pivot because we felt like this was a timely conversation, a necessary conversation. Yeah. And when we realized we had to pivot, I say, listen, I know the two people and I got them. And so Bishop Wiley, thank you so much for doing this pivot.
You young men have been such a blessing to me today. I can't tell you what this means to me.
Well, you're a blessing to us.
Bishop, you've been a blessing, man.
Yes, I know that's right.
Thank you, son.
Right, you in just like that. So listen, if you want to connect to Dr. L. Bernard Jakes, he's here in the city of Chicago. They've got some great churches here, and he is at the top of that list. So if you need somewhere to partner, of course, it's in the virtual space, but I promise you, you will get a personal touch. You've already heard that it emanates from him. So connect to them. They're at WPMBC.org, WPMBC.org. And of course, his church is doing things in the community, not just for their congregants, but for anybody they can touch and help. So their Cash App is right there. If you want to support their mission, WPMBC, $WPMBC, support them. I'm getting so many great comments. I'm posting them here on the screen. Barry Williams said, I'm enjoying this panel. Somebody else said, great show. This has been amazing. Would you all be willing to come back to do a part 2, Bishop Wiley, Dr. Jakes?
Oh, absolutely.
Anytime, Ricky. Let me know when.
I will.
Yeah, awesome. This would be great. But let me say before you log off, man, I want to thank you, Dr. Allmon, and you, Dr. Thurston, for your visionary leadership. I shared with Bishop, I shared with Allmon on our call earlier this week that I'm very careful about who I allow to pour into me.
Absolutely.
And when I tell you, and I'm really saying this for the streaming community, and not just because they're here, because if I talk about you behind your back, I'm going to talk about you in your face. You know, Allmon and Thurston pour into me.
Wow.
You know, whether it's the preaching, whether it's the post, it does not matter, because they are, one, theologically sound. Amen. You know, that is very important to me. And they're also very authentic and take very good care of the Word of God. So I want to thank you two gentlemen for everything you're doing, not just now, but having watched you navigate through this pandemic, as well as through the virus of racism and everything, sexism, because we deal with that too. All of the isms, watching help us to navigate through these things. So thank you so much for the invitation, and I look forward to coming back whenever you say, come on, let's get on. And I give you my word, if I can control it, that I will be on time. Happy Juneteenth, everybody.
So this has been amazing. Stephen, before we get off, man, I'm excited about what you have coming up. Also, you got to hit Stephen up. His Cash App is at, this is my brother. I don't say from another mother. We were born to two different groups of people, but we were just supposed to be rolling together, and we're doing the thing. Stephen is, as you all heard today, a brilliant mind. He is a master strategist. He's a project developer. You can learn about him at StephenThurston.com, but he's got something exciting coming on July 7th. It's going to be on Zoom. That's the only way you can access it. You've got to register. He's got a book out called Mirror Moments, and a book that he just released, an ebook a few weeks ago called Unplug. Get both of those. But he's facilitating a mirror moment movement, which is quite unique, quite intriguing, because what he's getting you to do is to look within yourself and to understand that the true value of who you are, or the true source of the frustration that you have with you, is within you. It's not outside of you. Stephen, talk about what you have happening on the 7th and how people can access it.
Sure, man. Thank you, Ricky. So before COVID, I would do every quarter or so a Mirror Moment live meetup. You know, I do the Mirror Moments on Tuesdays on Facebook Live. But we would actually gather together to have that intimate conversation and interaction. And since we can't do that, we're going to take it to a private Zoom gathering. So you simply go to my website, StephenThurston.com, register. As a result of registering, you will get the handout that will be available for that teaching. You'll get the link for it. And then I may just raffle off something like super real cool. So you want to make sure that you register. That's the only way you can get access to the link. You have to go to my website to register. And that's going to take place Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And in that session, I'm going to make a big announcement that's going to drop the following week.
It's crazy, man. I'm excited about everything that you're doing, Stephen, and it's a joy. It is a privilege to be partnered with you in all of our endeavors.
Yeah, and y'all need to check out everything Ricky is doing at RickyAllmon.org. His audio book, his content that will enhance and better your life. And then Ricky's coming on Thursday nights on Facebook Live as he's empowering people at 8:30 p.m. Plug into Ricky Allmon. Brainiac, brilliance is just flowing out of him with ease. So connect with my brother, please.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. This has been The Revolution. Will not be televised. It will be streamed. I'm your host, Dr. Ricky Allmon, along with my fellow host, Reverend Stephen Thurston. And we had as our guest co-host none other than the Venerable Honorable Bishop J. Douglas Wiley-Taylor, and my brother and friend, my frat, Dr. LaShawn Bernard Jakes. This was I told you I was using it If you're not a member of our group, go and join the group. Click the link that's below in the caption. Thank you for joining us. Have a happy Saturday. Remember, freedom is just not your ability to choose. Freedom is your ability to make the right choice. Have a happy Freedom Day. We'll talk to you later.